All right, let's call the meeting to order at 5:30. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Joe Zetzelberger,
Here.
Trisha Braun, here, Brian Wallace,
Here.
Chris Zellner, Sue Springman,
Here.
Mike Steinle.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is confirmation of open meeting compliance. Oh, we don't do that. I'm sorry, I'm going off autopilot. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. So, all right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Third item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody that would like to make a public comment online or in person? No? If you're online and you'd like to, do we have anybody online? One red haze.
Mary Heimbecker. I do have one raised hand.
All
Mary
right.
Heimbecker is on Zoom. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, hi, my name is Mary Heimbecker. I'm at 306 West 3rd Street in Waunakee. I just wanted to give my support for business item number 1, the ADU to 900 square feet. I support the size of an ADU to 900 square feet. I do not feel this would affect the district I live in, which is the district from Main Street down to 8th Street, in any fashion or form adversely. I currently have an 800 square foot detached garage and have much more green space. I feel in some of the areas more green space than what's around some of the new development homes. And I'd invite you to come and look at what an 800 square foot garage looks like and how much green space I have, just so you could see it. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mary. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. First item on the agenda is discussion and action on amendment to section 133-11 of the village ordinances to change the maximum allowable size of accessory buildings. This is brought back from previous meetings, and this is for recommendation to the village board. And this is just to clarify accessory buildings, which are different than accessory dwelling units. So accessory dwelling units are allowed at 900 square feet. Accessory buildings, other than that, are currently permitted only up to 800 square feet. Just so we're clear on that. I know last time we had they're easy terms to mix up and easy items to mix up. So Lauren, to you.
So you pretty much just described everything that I was going to. The last time, one of the sticking points was how do we define 50% of the primary structure? The easiest way to do it would be to use the local accessor data for first floor livable footprint, because they do separate the first floor from an attached garage. So we wouldn't necessarily be including the garage in the 50% equation. Sure, that's the word I'll use. So that's what staff is proposing, unless you have other ideas.
All right, what discussion do we have on the item? Mike, can we start with you?
Just to clarify, so this is just, if I understood right, it's just the living space. It's not the, if there's a garage attached, that doesn't count in that footprint, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's a big question I had. Last thing I would have on that, once this goes through, there is no other approval process, correct? That if somebody wants to do this, they can do it and they don't need any additional approval or oversight from the village. Is that true?
If they wanted to do either an accessory building or an ADU, they would still have to go through the building permit process and get a zoning permit. So there would be village oversight from that perspective, but there wouldn't be any board or commission that has oversight over it.
Okay, thank you.
Sue.
So this is buildings and accessory? I'm confused now. It's a buildings. It's not dwelling units?
No, accessory dwelling units are already allowed up to 900 square
So
feet.
this
This
is
is just for accessory units, accessory buildings that are not ADUs.
And those would be,
Those are currently allowed at
they
800
would be
square feet.
playground equipment, sheds.
Yes, but it's a maximum total allowable. So if you have a a detached garage and a play structure, you combine the two to get what that square footage is for
Right.
accessory buildings. But there are also limits on the number of accessory buildings, so most people don't get up to 800 square feet. What we're just trying to do is make because an accessory dwelling unit is a type of accessory building, we're just trying to make those numbers match in the code so it's easier to administer.
Okay. All right, that answers my question.
Trisha?
I think my clarification is kind of close to where you're struggling. So hypothetically, if with this clarification, if someone has an attached two-car garage to their house, basically, and they want to build their another garage in the back with like a workshop or something in it, they could put the ADU in that as well, or are we just confusing them? I think we're like trying to figure out where.
Yeah, an ADU,
That line is-
an ADU could go in a garage. It could be if you have like a carriage house above a garage. But what we're talking about is just the footprint of the accessory structure itself. An ADU can be 900 square feet. So if you build something that's an ADU plus a shed, the ADU can be 900 square feet.
Okay.
But if it's just a shed, the maximum size it can be is 800 square feet.
Okay, then just specific to, let's just say garages. If I have an attached garage, I could then build another two-car attached garage as long as my 50%, that first garage doesn't count towards the 50%, or does it? That's what I'm now.
The 50% only comes in with ADUs. So the only place that the 50% is listed is an ADU can be up to 900 square feet or 50% of the size of the primary dwelling unit, whichever is smaller. So if you have an 1,800 square foot, it can be 900 square feet in a detached ADU in the backyard. If you have a 1,600 square foot house, the largest your ADU could be is 800 square
Okay.
feet.
Got it.
But there's no such limitation on accessory structures as a whole, just on ADUs.
Okay.
I have more questions now. So if I have, so a tennis court and is an accessory structure. If I have 1,000 square foot house and I want to build a tennis court that exceeds that, because I think tennis courts are more than 800 square feet. Is that allowable? So the only accessory unit that is compelled to be 50% or less is a dwelling unit, not a regular accessory unit?
Correct.
Oh, okay. And then second question is I have a 500 square foot garage
Mhm.
and I want to make it into a carriage house and put a 500 square foot accessory dwelling unit. Can I do that? Because it's one 500 square footprint, but it's now 2 stories, it's 1,000 square feet total of usable space. I think there's so many questions for you. So.
The accessory building would be, because when we're doing the zoning on it, we just get a footprint.
Mhm.
So we would get the footprint of the building. So it would say the ADU and the ADU / garage is whatever 100 square feet you just said. We wouldn't be doing anything like floor area ratios where you're taking all of the stories and adding them together. We're just taking the footprint of the building.
Okay, so I could have a 900 square foot accessory building with a second floor and have 1,800 square feet total. First and second floor garage on first floor, 900 square feet on second.
If you passed this particular thing and it was allowable to have a 900 square foot accessory building, yes. Because it would be housed in the same building. It's the same footprint. If they were side by side, no,
No,
but they're stacked.
I can get 800 square feet if I do a 2-story instead of a 1.
Yeah, but there are also, I believe, height limitations on accessory dwelling units.
15 feet. Okay, right.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
So you'd have to be able to fit it within that height restriction.
5'2", so I could stand up in the middle of it, but nobody else could. I couldn't have any of my tall friends over. All right, okay. I feel like, okay, go ahead, Joe.
I had basically all the same questions that have been going down here, and I'm still a little bit confused. I mean, if we have a 500 square foot garage and we put, well, the 15-foot thing probably
Mhm.
takes care of the ADU, but maybe we want to use space for storage. Is that 15-foot limit still applicable, or could somebody have a 500 square foot garage and 500 square feet of storage and 500 square feet of storage?
There are height limitations on accessory buildings as well.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look. I do know there are height restrictions though in most zoning districts.
Okay. I'm a little bit concerned, I think, about, potentially a 900 square foot footprint of something. I'm not as concerned with 900 square feet if you're building up, but that's a good chunk of space. Now, knowing that it can't exceed half of the footprint of the original building and it still has to deal with the setbacks and everything else, I think we're probably fine. I mean, it's not a dramatic change.
Is that, I thought I understood it didn't have to follow the half the square footage of the original building, or am I misunderstanding? that?
Only if it's an ADU. ADU, the way the code was written, is the lesser of 900 square feet or 50% of the primary structure. If it's just an accessory building like a detached garage or a shed or a play structure, it doesn't have that 50% requirement. It's just a maximum of 800 square feet.
So that, in that case, it could exceed it.
Yeah. And there's part of me that's concerned with that. And the other part of me says, yeah, but if you've got a 2-story home that's 2,000 square feet, you've probably got 1,000 square feet of space. So if you have a 2-car garage, your ratios are already all messed up. So, yeah, is what it is. I'm good.
Well, we won't tell Todd that you said that.
His pet peeve saying.
Yep.
All right, Brian.
Surface as far as the detached building. On the surface, as far as the detached building goes, I am not against going to 900 feet to match up with the ADU requirement. I do think there is some ambiguities in this language here. Talks about residential zone parcel with 1 stall garage attached to the dwelling with alley access is permitted to have an additional 1 stall garage on the parcel. If a detached garage is erected, no other detached accessory buildings may be constructed. So if you put a detached garage, how does a playground or a chicken coop play into that factor? That's one of the ambiguities I'm confused on, because I know down here later it says chicken coops pursuant to section 1450. And then accessory dwelling unit, I guess, if you have a detached garage, that would have to be, you can't put another unit for detached, correct? That's your limit,
Yes.
1 building,
Mhm.
1 additional building. So as long as that's clear for everybody, I'm fine with it, but it seems a little ambiguous in a few spots.
Chris,
I'm good.
you good? All right. All right. Are you comfortable, Lauren, with the fact that it's a little bit ambiguous in some spots? I mean, do we need to kind of clarify some of those things if we're intending to clean up the ordinance a little bit and
I think it seems ambiguous in this specific ordinance, but it is cleared up in the individual zoning district ordinances. So it will say you can have 1 detached garage plus 1 more of the following. And it'll be a play structure, an in-ground pool, a tennis court, whatever, that has to follow those, the accessory building, accessory structure regulations. So it's a little less ambiguous when you're looking at the code as a whole and not just this section.
do we need to maybe produce like a little 1-sheeter so that people would,
My goal is to have some FAQs created at some point. Time is a factor.
it always is. Yeah, let us know how we can support that.
So it's on my list of things to do for a number of zoning questions.
Okay, cool. And let us all know how we can support that. Sue, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this this is much more complicated than I think people realize. And the approval process is so simple compared to what I think also individuals in a neighborhood are going to understand when something happens next door to them and something is built that could affect the value of their property or obstruct their sunlight. They bought a house, they've got this great sunlight in their kitchen or whatever, and it's gone, or whatever it is. What I would have liked to have seen are maybe the FAQs first and some case studies to show different instances of what would happen in what case, because I think it's very complicated. And I know originally the whole ADU thing came out of Madison. They said, this is gonna increase the supply of housing. It's not. And it's not gonna be any more, that's not the solution to the problem. There's much more effective means to solve the housing crisis than that. But there are so many, because you don't have any say in the design. Building inspection's not gonna look at the design. They're not gonna look at stormwater and the drainage that occurs. Those are all issues that I think if you live next door, you would care about. And you have no say. And I think you're gonna have a lot of complaints. I don't think people realize. I mean, I think there are ways to do it, but I think you have to break it down into a much more detailed ordinance with much more specificity.
We would have to touch many more ordinances to be able to do that, because right now you have to be affecting at least 20,000 square feet to have a stormwater management plan.
No, I'm aware of that. That's why I'm saying, because I can tell you in my own backyard, the drainage is all down the middle of the lot line. When there's a lot of rain, it comes into your lot towards your house. And if there are structures built there, it's gonna go all over the place and it will have impacts. And ignoring it, I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah, so
That's
we
just my personal opinion. I think this is just much more complicated than people think.
we do have a limitation with accessory structures that they cannot take up more than 30% of the required rear yard. But that's specific to the required rear yard, which is just the setback to the property line. If one of these structures was well within the code and put within the buildable area of the lot, it would be no different than someone expanding their house to the entire buildable footprint of the lot. So they would be well within their rights to do that.
Other questions or comments?
I struggle with these. If you're doing an ADU, I just feel like you're gonna want it to have a certain quality of look. You know, nobody's gonna wanna live in something that looks like a pole shed. There are no controls over this, that you could build anything you want within structural feasibility, and we have no say over it.
No, we don't have any design overlay districts in the community, so we don't have any control over design.
And that's where I default back. If you can't control it, you minimize it,
Mhm.
is my thought. You know, you minimize the impact on the water shed, you minimize the impact on the look. It's one thing if you have a little 8x10 Menards building or something. It's a whole nother thing if you're putting up a, 20x30 pole shed or whatever you could fit within the size limit. And without having that say, I think there'd be a lot of people wouldn't be too happy if they had something that wasn't aesthetically as nice plunked on the lot next to them. That's not gonna happen with an ADU. It could easily happen on these. You can throw a pole shed up a lot cheaper than you can, if you want an additional garage space or something. And I really feel like there need to be some sorts of checks and balances in this compared to an ADU.
Yep, outside of HOAs, we don't have any design review because that would require a design overlay district, and we don't have any of those in the zoning code.
And you know that covenants expire.
Yeah.
And people who live in these subdivisions don't even realize that.
Mhm.
So when that happens.
So the ADU ship is already sailed. So realistically, we're just talking about going from 800 to 900 on these accessory
Units.
units,
structures.
structures, whatever that is. So I think the ADU discussion could be taken up on a more strong basis at a different meeting, but I think for what we're talking about tonight, I don't see it as a major challenge, doing what we're doing.
It's true. It's just a square footage issue right now.
Just size.
But yeah, all right. So any more discussion before we move on? Do
Not-
we have,
Only moderately related to this, just because there's things listed in here like swimming pools and tennis courts. It would probably be good in the future to cross tennis out and put pickleball.
pickleball
Ball's
courts are not
loud.
allowed in backyards. Social activity, you have to go to the park.
Yeah.
I know. No, it's super social activity. All right, so do we have a motion? Is anybody interested in making a motion?
I will. I'll make the motion to recommend village board approval of the change to section 133-11 of the village ordinances, increasing the maximum accessory structure size to 900 square feet.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
No.
Okay, 2-5, motion carries. Thank you all for the good discussion. Next item on the agenda is discussion and action on repealing and replacing section 1412 and creation of section 133-1140 related to beekeeping ordinances. So Lauren, to you.
So beekeeping is currently allowed within the village of Waunakee. It's a conditional use, which means it would have to go through the conditional use permit process. However, as Attorney Kleinmeyer has pointed out frequently, with changes in the state law regarding conditional uses, it's becoming increasingly difficult to deny a conditional use for unless you have very specific reasons. And so the proposed ordinance repeals the current code, replaces section 1412 with the licensing requirements. So this would be structured similar to the way the chicken ordinance was, where the licensing requirements are in chapter 14 and the actual zoning code and setbacks and all of those things go into the zoning code in chapter 133. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Okay. So there is a little bit of precedence for this. The ordinance is primarily based on the city of Madison's regulations for beekeeping. One specific thing that we did with this ordinance that wasn't done with chickens, but we kind of, you don't know it till you know it, and we've learned our lesson after learning it, is when it comes to G1 institutional educational properties, we do have limitations for above and below 2 acres of property. So that way we don't have someone on a small parcel requesting, 10 hives of bees. And we also aren't going to run into variance issues, hopefully.
All right. So let's begin discussion. Chris, can I open with you?
My mic is on, sorry. With that. My biggest issue with this, and bees are bees and we need bees for our world. I think of the people that are allergic to bees and have a situation where there's potential for death. I know that depending on the circumstance, there's not that, but is the village covered by us having this? If somebody were to die from a bee sting now that we've put something in place, do we have any liabilities? Does the person who's keeping the bees have a liability that we should maybe say they have to have an insurance of some sort to protect them? I don't know. These were just my thoughts. Otherwise I know bees are important to our world and somebody can get stung by a bee at any time. That's it. The rest of it, yeah, I agree that we should be consistent with what we're doing here. And we have to. So that's really all I have about that.
Thanks, Chris. Brian?
I would echo the same sentiments. I know, and I'm gonna butcher it, but on a conditional use permit, one of the requirements is health and wellness of individuals. That's one of the things that can deny a conditional use permit.
Mhm.
And I could make the connection here that this falls under that, and I would be reluctant to take it away from the conditional use process.
Great, Joe?
What can I say besides ditto? I'm a little bit concerned I can see both sides of this. We're either keeping it conditional use or going down this road. Particularly from the legal standpoint, I think it probably makes far more sense to go down this road. But I do have big concerns about the same stuff that's been brought up.
Tricia?
Yeah, I think with the process in place, and while I understand where Attorney Kleinmeyer is making the case, I still think that process gives someone an ability to be heard. For example, if someone who has like an allergic child lives next door to where that application is coming from, to give them the chance to say, this is a terrifying situation for us. Like this is a, you know, even regardless if they say honeybees aren't whatever, they don't affect people with allergies to bees, it's still that kind of that fear of what would happen, you know, who would want to risk it. And so I think just having that part in place, or having the ability to say, you know, maybe it's a different part of the lot or a different type of structure or something like that, that could be more protective. So I don't disagree with this being a conditional use.
Sue?
I agree. I think it should be a conditional use because of a health issue.
Oh,
I
your
think
mic.
that really oops. I agree. I've got grandkids and one of them is allergic to bees and scared to death of bees, and I'd want to have a say if I was gonna have bee hives right next to my lot line.
All right, Mike?
I'd echo the same sentiments. I think if this were ever to go the route of licensing, I think it should be fair to require some, to Chris's point, some sort of insurance requirement in order for them to get a license. Or even like under the conditional use thing, I don't think it's unfair to have them have to have some sort of liability coverage for just these kinds of things.
Does that kind of liability coverage exist within homeowners insurance?
I don't know if it's
That'd be one.
homeowners, but there's gotta be, you know,
Chris,
people
you
have
have cell
animals.
insurance?
Not
Yeah.
this kind, but
Not this guy?
generally there could be some sort of an umbrella
Yeah.
policy that would cover something like this.
There'd be things for dog bites or, you know, cat or whatever. I'm sure there's gotta be something.
The other thing I would point out when it comes to conditional use permits is that issue did come up during village board when they had this discussion. And Attorney Kleinmeyer did say that someone nearby having an allergy would not be a valid reason to deny a conditional use permit. Because it's not guaranteed that they're always going to live there. It's not necessarily considered a health issue in the way that we consider other municipal health issues like sewerage or clean water.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I think I would file a lawsuit on
wouldn't,
that one.
yeah, I wouldn't want to bet on that.
So
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, I mean, people have nut allergies, peanut allergies, and in schools today, I mean, they take that very seriously. And if a child has a nut allergy or that, they're gonna not allow nuts in those classrooms. So how is this really any different than that?
I mean, we're an EpiPen family, and I'm throwing them all over here. Yeah, expired in 2012, so we've had these for a while. The thing that worries me, of course, this is a really awful shot to get because the needle is really big. Don't let kids who have them hear me say that. Yeah, because they're big needles. They buy you time. They don't stop any allergy. It gives you enough time to get to the hospital, and you're usually issued 2 of these if you've got a serious allergy. And that gives you all together 45 to 60 minutes to get to a hospital and hope they can start the reaction. My kid isn't allergic. My young adult is not allergic to bees. Is allergic to peanuts instead. And so, I mean, I really do think that conditional use permit, even if we can't deny it, compels a conversation between the homeowner and the neighbors that we aren't requiring otherwise. If it's just a license, you wake up one morning and you've got a peanut allergic, not a peanut allergic, a bee allergic child or an adult, because it's far more prevalent in adults than children. And the hives are in the backyard and nobody's really informed you or told you. And then I feel that creates a lot of an issue. I would really prefer that we keep the conditional use permit requirement in place, even if we can't deny it, because then at least we've met a minimum standard of care for ensuring that neighbors are having those conversations and getting that information out there. And I don't know many neighbors that would object. I don't know if any of my neighbors, if they found out that your granddaughter was not peanut allergic, allergic to bees, you can see where my mind is with the peanuts, would care and would not do it. But if we don't have that conversation, we're not requiring that between neighbors, and I don't know that you would know. And I just put them up thinking it was okay. So I don't feel that it's much of a step to ask people to go through if they're gonna keep bees. It's allowable in the community already. We just need that CUP to help us have that conversation. So
So then
I'm sorry, we're done with public comment. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask for the purposes, this is a public comment, it's a request. Could concerns about stinging, could we get some evidence around that provided for when we're having a discussion?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to call an allergist and bring an allergist in to talk
No,
about bee allergies.
I mean studies about urban beekeeping, like in backyards leading to people getting actually stung.
We can, this is as much about, and again, this is not, you're not on this plan commission. Feel free to ask that when it comes to the board. But I think this is as much about managing relationships within the village and keeping risks down to a minimum. It is a concern, how many people are we willing to have risk their health in order to simply say that we're not going to allow a CUP? So. Or to ignore a CUP. Do we have any motion on the issue? Or any further discussion? No, do we need a motion? I don't think we need a motion if we're not changing it.
Well, or
Well-
we could take the motion and take a vote.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or we could
Well,
change.
so there are a few changes between the current ordinance and this. So like our current ordinance requires, I'll have to pull this up really quick, sorry.
Lauren, when you say this, does that means requirements that changed due to the licensing, just for clarification?
To the licensing and to the location of where bees can be kept on the property. So currently,
we're going from 50 feet from lot line down to 25 feet.
yep,
Was also one of the changes.
yes, so that is, the current standard is if bee colonies are kept within 50 feet of any exterior boundary of the property on which the hive stand or box is located, a barrier will prevent bees from flying through it no less than 5 feet high. So within that 50 feet, right now it's actually 20 feet to a property boundary is the minimum. This would be increasing it to 25 and making a flyaway barrier mandatory at 6 feet tall instead of 5 feet tall. And the purpose of a flyaway barrier is you put it close to the hive and it forces the bee to go up and over. And once a bee is on a flight path, it tends to stay on that flight path. So it's trying to make sure that the bee is getting up and over most people.
The other question I had too is on page 21, the combined area of hives in an institutional setting cannot exceed 750 square feet.
Yeah, because they're allowed to have up to 10 hives. And so that's, when you do the math, that's what it comes out to.
It's a lot of hives. That's a lot of bees. So, yeah.
There's also a lot of lots with the backyard that goes down quite a bit from an elevation standpoint. And so decks up here and
Yeah.
so maybe you come back with something different. that-
That is an option. If you have specific changes that you would like to see made, I can take those notes and bring it back next time.
For me personally, it's conditional use permit is something that we've got to have and continue to have. I mean, you're allowed to keep bees as it is now. You just need to have a conditional use permit. What is our current limit for commercial or educational? So if we're under a G1 right now for schools, what are they allowed to have at the moment?
We don't have any maximum or minimum sizes for hives.
Okay.
Is it feasible to make a motion to keep the process that is currently in place with a conditional use permit requirement for beekeeping rather
I would
than
think so.
not doing anything?
So just to clarify, Brian, so what you're saying then, any of these restrictions would be called out in the CUP as they go through the process where warranted?
Yeah, I guess I don't know what of these they use currently in that CUP process, right? But, you know, maybe there's some here that are worthwhile as part of that process, but I'm getting the vibe from everybody on this committee that we're all in line and probably just keeping this as a conditional use permit. So would it be better off to make a recommendation than not to not do anything? Or make a motion to do that rather than just leave it like.
We could, do we have a second meeting to talk about this?
Yes.
Okay, so, but maybe we want to see some changes. I'd be curious from the, ag teachers at the high school, like if they were to use bees as an instructional topic, you know, do they feel they need 750 square feet of bees? Like, what would they reasonably ask for? And same for the smaller schools, 315 square feet for a daycare that's on a residential lot would be a lot of bees. So that just the size of the hives would be. All right, other questions, other comments? No. We don't have a motion. I think we're gonna see if it make some changes and come back next meeting. All right. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on a recommendation to contract with Dane County Planning and Development to update the housing chapter of the village's comprehensive plan.
Okay, this one starts to get, as if things weren't complicated before, this one is also a little bit complicated. So the Dane County Planning Division is offering a technical assistance program to municipalities in Dane County who are seeking to update the housing element of their local comprehensive plan. They have state funding for this, and one of the reasons that they're offering this is that to access certain WIDA funds, like infrastructure loans for affordable housing, you have to have a housing element of your comprehensive plan that's been updated within the past 5 years. Ours was updated in 2017, so we're outside of that 5-year period. It is a first come, first served program, but we have already made those overtures to tell them that we're potentially interested in doing this. Todd and I have met with Olivia and Alex from Dane County. A little bit about the current comprehensive plan. It was adopted in 2017, like I said. So in addition to being more than 5 years old, the village population has increased about 23% since the adoption of that plan. So we have quite literally outgrown it. And we're planning in the next budget to redo the comprehensive plan as a whole, but we wouldn't expect to see any changes from that until 2026. Whereas doing this through Dane County, we could have results in as little as 6 months. So do we update this one chapter and get it done sooner? Or do we wait until we do the whole plan, even though it's going to take a little bit longer? That's kind of the question before you.
All right, let's start in the middle and go out. Sue.
I had concern about doing this outside of the comprehensive plan because I've been involved in the comprehensive plan a couple times, and it is comprehensive, and how housing impacts traffic, parks, everything is a big issue. So I would prefer to do it all at once. I mean, I don't believe that they'll get it done in 6 months because they're gonna have a lot of requests. And if we get it done in 2026, that's not that far away. I mean, it's a year, a little over a year. So 2026 is when we're putting it in the budget for 2025.
Yes.
So we'll start the process, and then that allows people to go to public hearings and look at everything, bike paths, parks, traffic, streets, all together. And I would prefer that.
Thank you, Sue. Brian.
Agreed.
Chris.
You're working your way into out.
I am starting in the middle.
Mike.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. The question I have is typically comprehensive plans are done every 10 years required. So we're closing in on that 10 years anyways. So I don't understand why we wouldn't do it all together at one time here. It's going to take 12 months to finish it anyway, which is going to get us almost to 2027, which is at that 10-year mark. So I do understand, make sure that I'm clear on it. What you're trying to get done here is for the WIDA part of it, so we'd be eligible within that. So while I appreciate that, I think it's dangerous to take one spot out when you're looking at the whole picture, because that could have a ripple effect in both positives and potentially negative ways, but you won't know that until after it's happened. So doing it all together at one time, I think makes more sense.
All right. Mike?
I agree with what's been said. Anytime I've been involved with these things, anytime you piecemeal them, then you end up trying to make it all fit together later, and it just doesn't flow as well as if it's just all one coordinated effort to put it all together at once. So I just, while the weed aspect is in there, I just think it's better to do it all at once and avoid potential pitfalls.
Joe?
I would tend to agree that I think doing it all at one time makes sense. I do want to clarify. You talked about the grant. Is there any cost to us in doing this?
No.
Okay. And the second part would be, if we go through this and whatever is created, do we have to approve and adopt that? Or can we go, yeah, that was a great try, but we don't necessarily agree, or, you know, what are we obligated to do at that point?
You would have two options at that point. You could adopt it as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, or you could leave it out and keep the comprehensive plan as it is.
Okay. And I guess that would also then mean we could leave it out and use that as input to the rest of the comprehensive plan overhaul.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Tricia?
Only question I have is, if we don't do this, are we going to be missing out on anything, or a timeline associated with receiving any of the grant funds if we're looking at them, if there's anything out there that
For WIDA or, yep, so,
for the 475 million that they were
yeah.
referencing?
We don't have any affordable housing projects right now that would qualify for the WIDA loans or any of the other WIDA projects. So we wouldn't necessarily be missing out on it, but if something did come along, then I guess it kind of depends on the development schedule for that. Usually you're going to be looking at, you know, months of review and things like that. So it is entirely possible that by the time we got to that point, that we would be qualifying for those loans. Our comprehensive plan would already be done.
Okay, that was my only question.
So a question, how much grant money is this tied to? So what would their normal charge be if they didn't have the WIDA grant to cover it? Just out of curiosity.
I actually don't,
Don't know.
we didn't talk about that part.
All right, I'm always curious how much would they charge for it? So if we don't, or do we know at this point, or does we didn't know if they are going to be dispersing any of the new money that's coming down from the federal government for affordable housing? Because there is, from the seminar I was in on Friday, it sounds like there will be some money in there for down payment assistance and some other programs outside of LIHTC projects and whatnot that we might be interested in doing. And do we know if this is going to be having a study like this, I imagine, is a qualification for that, but does it need to be this specific study or a WIDA approved study?
The only thing I know of for certain is the existing WIDA loan projects for affordable housing, specifically like the infrastructure grant. I don't know about anything that could be coming down the pipeline.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they'd announced anything, let it slide. Yeah.
Do we know what the vacancy rate is right now in multifamily? We've had quite a bit built, and I have seen signs up that I never used to see, and I'm just curious if we know. I know it's very difficult to know that.
I don't have an overall vacancy rate for the community, but I do know that since Heritage Hills opened up they opened up 200 units in December, they're 75% full.
So
So
there's
they've got
there's
a
quite bit
pretty
of
good
capacity.
uptake rate.
Yeah.
There was a note here on one of the earlier items that said we're at less than 5%. Oh, that's what it
Yeah.
said.
I am concerned when it comes to this, and this is something that I hopefully we'd find out. We're missing we've done a good job of providing multifamily in the last 5 or 6 years, like that we've really kind of changed the landscape, and there's a lot of entry-level housing now for people in their 20s and 30s that are moving back to the area. I feel like we're missing the first rung on the ladder. So what we don't have is the, new homeowner product. out there, and we've tried to bring that to light. A study like this, and it's be part of the comprehensive plan, certainly, I would really hope could enlighten how we could do that and what that looks like. I know we've talked about the difficulty in bringing condominiums and townhouses with the new FHA rules on financing, how difficult that is to do in this environment. But it feels like when we're talking about affordable housing, it's that entry-level homeowner that I'm feeling more and more concerned about is just missing from our community.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was, and this is a bigger conversation, but I think it ties into that too, is, you know, a lot of these programs have very good intentions, but they're so tied to low and moderate, and actual workforce housing is like 80 to 120% of your median income. And they don't address, that's really where a lot of the gap is, especially in Waunakee, yes, but even outside in the state, and to try to get some of those projects to pencil, just without additional assistance is impossible right now. So bigger picture problem, but
You know, one thing we could do is lobby our legislators to change the TIF policy so that more infrastructure in some of the requirements we put on developers and single-family subdivisions, it's about 30% of your home cost can be absorbed through increment. So that could help bring down housing costs. Those are all things we could look at.
And even that TIF extension, because we can roll that into down payment assistance programs and do things like the affordable, not the affordable, the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund. All those things would be great if we could do more than 1 year to.
So
extend them.
in the ADU thing, it says here, whereas the village is currently facing a housing shortage as indicated by our rental vacancy rates below 5%. I do have one other question though. It's interesting is they put in here in the comp plan within 5 years. I'd be curious to know where everybody else is in Dane County as far as being 5 years or newer on their comp plan.
Right.
Is there a way to find that out? Because they're putting this requirement on them. Where is everybody really?
It would take some time to research it, but it's definitely something that I could look up. It's really just searching each community and their comp plan. I do know that Middleton has recently done one.
Windsor's in the
Verona
process,
is
isn't it?
currently in the process of doing one.
Windsor's
so-
finishing theirs. I think DeForest's is last year.
I think
They
so.
finished it. Yeah, so. I used to be able to rattle them off who was doing them. Hazard of the job at work. So are we interested in this or, you know, as
It sounds
said,
like
we could-
probably you're more interested in just seeing it done as a whole with the comprehensive plan, is what I'm understanding from the conversation, but I could be wrong.
so you brought this to us. Would you be
Mhm.
interested in seeing this done? Does this help you in any way as we're moving forward with the?
That's
comp
why we
plan?
brought it to you, is because it's a little bit more complicated than it would be on the surface if we weren't doing, or because we're doing the comp plan hopefully next year. This could get it done sooner, but does that necessarily put us ahead for any WIDA products that, for projects that we don't have in the pipeline right now? So from a staff perspective, I'm leaning toward just wait until the entire comprehensive plan is done, and as part of the RFP, say, work closely with Dane County on the housing element. The same way we would say work with the MPO on the transportation element.
Excellent. All right. Thoughts? Are we all?
yeah, it almost could double Lauren's work if we ended
Yeah.
up doing it. So to do
You get
it
to do this
twice.
Twice, right? Absolutely.
I think I would go back to the concept of maybe having this done, knowing that it could be an input into the rest of the comprehensive plan work.
Yeah.
I mean, if there is no cost to us, I'm having a hard time seeing why we wouldn't want to at least
To do it.
let somebody give it a try.
Thoughts? Yeah.
If you have not read the Dane County Housing Plan, maybe we could send that around to everybody because all the thoughts and ideas on housing are in that plan. It is huge.
Mhm.
And so that work has already been done, and it's a matter of picking the items out of that we want in this community. So I think there already is a good head start that would help us when we do our comp plan, because that was very comprehensive, and
Yeah.
you've probably read it.
Yeah. One of the specific things within the scope, when we were talking with them, one of the specific things we did ask for, which we could also ask for of whichever consultant ends up doing the comprehensive plan, is to do a survey of the large multifamily building managers, owners, to see what their vacancy rate is and what their annual retention rate is. Which would answer a couple questions that came up earlier, but it's not something that can't be done in a whole comprehensive plan project.
Can I suggest a way you might find that out? Madison Gas and Electric used to do a every year, quarterly vacancy report by zip code. They stopped doing it in the second quarter of 2022 for some reason. But I wonder if Waunakee Utilities might, because they do the electric, it's the electric. And what they do is they look at the electric meters and they can see if it's in tenant names or property owner names. And if it's in property owner names, except for really old buildings that might not be separately metered, they can give you a good sense of vacancy. So maybe you could ask Waunakee Utilities and see if they might be able to help us do something.
We could do that easily.
Mhm.
Is there anything in here that you see that you would like done ahead of time? I know we talked offline about, or out of meeting about the survey. They were
Mhm.
gonna possibly farm it out to UW Extension.
Yeah, so one of the ideas was initially, one of the ideas was to do a statistically significant survey where it's only sent to a certain number of households. But in my experience, and I think you mentioned it too, it tends to skew towards older populations. So even though you get your p-values and everything, it doesn't necessarily match the makeup of your community. And so the way that we've been moving and planning is just to do an open survey that's available to everyone. And if that's the case, then Dane County could do it through SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, that's what I've been moving towards when I'm doing surveys, simply because it's so skewed otherwise that it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, Dillman, who created the method, would say that it's statistically significant, but it's not valid. So that would, other than that, is there anything in the study that you would say should be done ahead of time or that we should be thinking of? No?
No.
Okay. All right. All right. So, what is our consensus? Chris, Brian? Okay. Joe?
I'm inclined to go forward with it, but I'm not strong.
Tricia?
Yeah, Lauren, if you saw value in going forward at this time, just for the information that you'd have as we go into our comp plan process, could change my mind, but otherwise I would be leaning towards waiting also.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that they would be pulling in terms of data is stuff that would be done during a comprehensive plan. It's things that I have access to already if I had the time to go in and look at it or the need to go in and look at it. So while it's nice having someone else being able to do that for you, I don't think it's anything that necessarily couldn't wait until the comp plan.
Sue? Mike? Okay. All right. Wait.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Next item on the list is discussion and possible action on a rule for requiring the Plan Commission to have and use official Waunakee.com email addresses for the Plan Commission business.
Yep, so this has also had a little bit of history with it. In February, Village Board voted to approve expanded use of the @waunakee.com email address that all staff use for communication among members of official boards, committees, and commissions. This was to make sure that in the event of an open records request, that staff had ready access to all of those communications rather than trying to get everyone in their private emails and have them go through it and making sure that we get everything. But after further review, the decision was modified this past week in favor of creating a training policy and module instead. But the village attorney expressed an opinion that he thought it was reasonable to require Plan Commission to have and use official email addresses from the village for Plan Commission communications due to the frequency of meetings, the volume of decisions that are made, and the high potential for communication records requests. So we thought we would bring it to you and see if that's a policy that you wanted to adopt, or if you are comfortable continuing to do it kind of the way we've always been doing it. And if there's a records request, going through your emails and making sure that all of those are provided to the village. And we have Jared here for questions.
And this is one of the things, as we were saying, we're not going to do it for all committees. Brian Kleinmeyer, our attorney, said he really recommend that if you were going to do it for one, and he would strongly recommend that we do it for Plan Commission, just because if there is going to be some sort of action, it's most likely going to happen around a Plan Commission item. And so having that backstop gives staff the tools that they need to comply with open records requests. So do we have questions? Should we start? Joe, anything, comments?
I got nothing.
Trisha? Sue? No, Brian? Chris?
Well, I'm gonna say something because nobody else seems to want to in regards to this, but I check my email regularly, the village email that I have. I think this commission, the village board are more potentially gonna be more heavily scrutinized and the records requests are going to be there. You're gonna get wild accusations, no matter if you're on the plan commission or on the village board. They can come from developers, other people that just make statements that are completely incorrect, but they're gonna, if it gets to a lawsuit, and I was involved with that, some of you were me as well. It's easy. You have your village staff just get it for you. You don't have to go rummaging trying to figure out any of the emails that you have with the words "the" or whatever that are in them. They do it for you, and so I completely agree that it's good to have our emails, that we check them regularly.
All right, thank you, Chris. Mike?
Just a question, just because I'm newer to the committee, there haven't been a lot of emails so far. Are there, in general, are there a lot more emails than? Cause I would say definitely go for it if it's one of those things where there are a lot of emails and then it's easier to sort out. But if there's like one a month where we're getting materials ahead of time, it's not a big deal to me either way.
I think the
So,
question would come if something did come up and people were contacting us as plan commissioners outside of our normal package delivery.
gotcha.
So if there's lobbying for something or there's a lot of public comment or an issue that becomes a hot button issue, then you will get emails about that issue.
So they just have that email and not like my board
Not your
personal one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you had a question for staff, you'd use that
Yes, yeah.
email.
Yeah.
I've been caught in open records in a work email, just not caught, asked for it. And I had thousands and thousands of work emails. It took me weeks and weeks to pick out the ones I needed. So I really wished I'd had a separate email address.
Yeah.
Just so
Really
much
nice
easier.
you've got it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So with that, any more discussion? If not, I think we need a motion. Do we need a motion or are we just discussing this one? Discuss and possible action. So I believe. Do we have a motion? Do we need a motion? Or can you just assign us?
I would assume that there's gonna be a policy or something that's gonna be sent out to all of us that says, use your email.
Yeah, it'd probably be.
Specifically
board
for plan
approved.
commission,
Yeah,
please
so-
check your emails daily, those kinds of things, whatever the protocols you want us to have and be under.
Yep.
That's,
used to do that, so maybe the clerk wants to write up something.
Yeah.
I forgot Carly came to my
Sorry.
meeting.
That's okay. I just want to say one thing, just to be sure that if you're gonna only use the village email and that's what you guys decide that you want a village email, don't have any of your emails forwarded to your personal email because it's easier to check at home. That's the same thing. So open records request is basically you guys complying with them. If you get a lot of requests, we haven't had any for specific, emails, but it does happen and it is a possibility, but be sure you keep everything then completely separate. If you transfer one email, your personal email is now a record. So if you're not gonna check your email, your village email that we would give you, then I would suggest you stick to your personal and you create a Gmail account to keep it totally separate. Not have that's kind of what we were suggesting before is to create a Gmail account, like Chris at Plan Commission or Chris Plan Commission at Waunakee, no, Chris Plan Commission at Gmail. You can tell it's been a long day. So anyways, that was my only stipulation is if you want to go the email route, with getting a Waunakee email, you have to check it, you have to keep it separate, but if you are inclined to do a Gmail account and create one separately, that's an option too.
But that one we would still have to check, whatever one it is.
You have
If
to,
it's
yes,
Email account too, you also can't take the Gmail account and forward it to your personal.
correct.
Yeah,
That opens up your records, your personal email for open records request.
excellent. Okay. So what are we thinking, plan commissioners? Waunakee.com address or prefer not to? Yeah. All right.
I would agree.
All right, should we make it formal? I will make a motion that the plan commission request Waunakee.com email addresses from the village of Waunakee.
Second it.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, I think that's the last item on our list for business. Is it? Oh, joint plan commission agenda tomorrow. Anything exciting happening at joint plan?
We're just doing some housekeeping, because there's this technical thing where if there's a change to the zoning code, if it's going to include the joint plan area, even if it's within the village, it has to be passed by joint plan commission. So we're just cleaning up a couple things that have gone to village but have not gone to joint plan commission. And that's specifically chickens and external lighting standards.
All right,
Can I ask a,
yeah.
Who's on tomorrow?
I'm on joint. Can you send me a map of where that is now? I've forgotten what area is considered joint between
Yeah.
Westport.
All right. Any other questions, suggestions for the good of the cause? If none, we have one final motion left. All right.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.